my name is Bellamy Prince, and I was asked by Jennifer Thompson to speak to you today about life as an artist. I have been in Cleveland now since 1996. I grew up in New York City, so I grew up around art. My parents were both really interested in art and took me to museums when I was young. And my mother was actually also an amateur artist. And an amateur painter. My father was a very serious amateur photographer, and so I grew up around images. And when I was young, I thought that I wanted to be an artist, and I took all sorts of art classes, and my senior project in high school was illustrating Shakespearean sonnets. And so I was super into it. And when I went to college, I was going to double major in art and English and wound up not being able to do the art major because I went abroad for a year. And so I went ahead and just got my English degree. So when I realized that I wasn't going to be an artist, I decided that I was going to work in advertising because that was creative and I could make money and I would still be around creative people and thinking of ideas and things like that. And in the midst of an internship that I had when I was at this advertising agency, I had a dream. And in the dream, I was back at my beautiful teenage drafting table, but in a studio full of windows and lots of materials all around me, and I was really, really happy in this dream. And so I decided that I should go to art school. So I did, and I managed to get into a really great art school, the School of the Art Institute in Chicago, and I was there for 2 years only because I had done a lot of the work at college, all of the foundation work at college. And I came out with a BFA. Then after that, I went and I got an MFA at a master's at University of Washington in Seattle. So I, at that point in time, was a little bit older and I knew what I wanted to do. And so I was really focused on printmaking. So I went in as a painter when I was at Chicago and came out as a printmaker, possibly because I broke my nose on a press in my first lithography class. I think I probably took it as a challenge, and so it really became my love, printmaking. So when I left Seattle, I left to come back to Cleveland, or to come to Cleveland. My husband was from Cleveland, and to come to Cleveland to help start Zygote Press, which some of you may have heard of. It's a nonprofit printmaking workshop in Cleveland on East 30th, and it is a place that is a community workshop where we teach classes and we have exhibitions, and it was really my first child and my first love. I started it with 3 other people, and it continues to exist, and it's entering into its 25th year next year, which is really, really exciting. So that is basically, I always knew I wanted to be an artist, but when I really made the commitment was after I had this dream. And that led me to this crazy life. But I knew I wanted to be an artist from the time that I was little. I was always drawing and always thinking about different ways of looking at things. And so sometimes it bites you when you don't expect it. So since moving to Cleveland, I've had a pretty varied career. I came to Cleveland as an artist to help open up a nonprofit workshop. I did not know anything about nonprofits, and I learned a lot really quickly. We created all of our own programming and everything, and all of us were artists, so none of us knew what we were doing. And so Cleveland was a great place to start a workshop because it was a place that was cheap. There was a lot of space available, and there was a really wonderful artist community. So that is very important, I think, finding a community that feels right for you. and finding a place where you can afford to live. I think that is actually kind of essential, really, because it's hard to be an artist. So I moved here and did that, and then after about 10 years at Zygote, I was offered a position to help start an in-house art program at the Cleveland Clinic. You guys all know about the Cleveland Clinic. It's a huge, huge hospital. And they wanted to focus on making a contemporary art collection, like a really good contemporary art collection. And so I was asked to join a very small team of people. And on the team, there was someone who had been doing, the head of the department was someone who had worked on corporate collections for a long time. So she knew about the market, she knew about auctions, she knew all the galleries and whatnot. And then there was an art historian. So she knew about movements and about different ways of thinking about how influences, one thing influences another. And then I was the artist, so I knew a lot about making. I knew a lot about how things were made, and I could find out and talk to artists easily about that. So it was a very complementary team, and we worked together for 14 years. And we built a collection that started off as about 2,500 works, and by the time we left, we were at about 7,500 works of contemporary art. And contemporary art means art that is made primarily by living artists or artists who are recently deceased. So mostly things that were made from like 1990 on. And it was an amazing thing. I learned a lot. I used all of my education, my writing skills, my minimal math skills, my marketing skills, all of those things, and got to work on some really great projects. So I think that was an amazing opportunity, but after a while, after 14 years and some other life changes, I decided that I wanted to start my own company. So one of the things that I had done all along between Zygote and then the clinic was to really create positions for myself and to create a kind of like a job, and a program for myself that was not something that I had thought that I could do, but I guess it's something that I really like doing. And so after a while at the clinic, I had done it already, so it was time to start something new. So I recently left the clinic and have started my own business, and it is burgeoning, and it is back to printmaking. It's called Deep Dive Art Projects. And so in addition to doing my own artwork, which I've been doing all along, I am also now going to start running this company, which is a little scary, especially with COVID, but I have faith in the universe, and I think it's all going to come out okay. So, one of the things about both being an artist and being someone who had a liberal arts education is that it's really opened me up to a lot of different opportunities here in Cleveland and in other places, and it has been really wonderful to be able to utilize all of the parts of my brain. So that has been really terrific. My work has always been, I would say, pretty much focused. It's printmaking, but it is focused on photography as a resource. So I am an only child, and I grew up in a family of only children. My father and mother were both only children, and my mother died when I was quite young, about 10. And so I had this it was sort of like a mystery to solve in a way, to get to know her as I got older. And I had all of these photographs of her from the time that she was a baby until she was a teenager, and then when she married my father, and then when she had me. And my father was, as I said, a very active amateur photographer, and so there are a lot of photographs. And in addition, my father's father, my grandfather, was also a very active amateur photographer. So I have photographs from the beginning of the 20th century, from like 1904, summer camp pictures of my grandfather, to all the way to now, because I also have been taking pictures. And my husband took pictures, and so photography has really been like, if you look behind me, you can see there's a fair amount of photography hanging up in my studio, and I mostly focus on printmaking in relation to photography. So some of the works that you might see are some straight photography works that I've done, and I have shown my work, but all of that work really takes on this idea of movement and gesture that has a lot to do with drawing. It has a lot to do with the spontaneity of printmaking. And so even with the photographs, there is this feeling of a moment captured, not a posed moment. I'm really not interested in the photograph that is the perfect photograph or the perfect family photograph. Those generally are not images that I use in my work. And so you can see by looking at my work, if you look at some of the different pieces, that there is this element of the other, the thing that you don't see. So, if you were to take this part of my studio and look, you would learn a lot within just this part of my studio, right? And so to me, it's not about me, it's about what's happening back there, or what's happening on the street next to me, or and capturing that and really focusing on that in the image that I work with. So it's interesting because on one hand, when I look at my work, I say, well, it hasn't changed that much. But in other ways, it's evolved a lot. I'm really interested in using different techniques. So, the printmaking part of my work is sort of like, how do I push an image to a point where it's really, doesn't look perfect like a photograph. It looks like a hand has touched it. It looks like there's something that is, that the different techniques are affecting it, and that in turn creates something unique. And so the printmaking and the photography really go hand in hand, and they kind of, work together, and they support each other. And so it's been really exciting. Like lately, my work, I just had a show called Time Elastic, and I started using a new technique which combines painting and photography and printmaking, and it's been really fun. And so definitely enjoying what I'm doing in the studio is a huge, huge important part of making, right? And learning something new. So one of the things about being a printmaker is that you're constantly trying different techniques, and you learn all these techniques in order to sort of create a dictionary or a toolbox, if you will, of things that you can use in order to make your work. And so I've really enjoyed doing that, and working with printmakers over the years, and being in different kinds of studios, and certainly working at Zygote has been just huge. And so one of the things that's going to happen with this new space that I have built, essentially, is that I'm going to be working with artists and helping them develop work, helping them to develop unique prints and sometimes editioned prints, and eventually, hopefully, sell them. So that's the idea. And working with artists that I like, whose work I like, not necessarily a personality. There are a lot of artists that I like and I don't really love their work, but there's a lot of artists that I don't like and I really love their work. So it's a mix, right? But I want to work with someone who I like and I like their work, because I'll be working closely with them. So all of that is to say that there are lots of things that are really fulfilling about being an artist and working in the arts. One of them especially is that art is needed by everybody. Art heals, art impacts people's lives. Whether you're helping people learn how to make art, or you're helping people through art therapy, or you're doing it yourself and then showing it to other people, art can really affect somebody's life and the way that somebody sees the world. It requires a lot of resilience. So that is something that I have, I'm happy to say, after many years. And so one of the things that Jennifer asked me was to give 5 suggestions of things that I can tell you about being an artist and things that you might want to think about as you consider that for a career. First, I'll talk about the hard things. So the hard things are, you have to really be able to take criticism, and you have to really be able to take rejection and let it just flow down your back, because you can't get to the next step in your work unless you're willing to learn and to listen and to see. And so taking criticism, being able to hear people's opinions, they are just opinions, but really taking those into account sometimes can make a huge difference in how you see your work. And then also, you know, there's a lot of rejection. So there's lots of times when the work doesn't get into a show, or when you think that you did something really great and you apply for a grant and you don't get the grant. When you get it, it's terrific. But when you don't get it, it's much more frequent. And so you have to get used to that and recognize that there's always something else coming down the pike for you to try. And so that is where that resilience comes in, right? Very important. And also an open mind and an ability to really try to not be defensive. But the most important thing is to be able to speak, right? So my number one thing is, when I speak to young artists especially, is don't blow off your English classes, don't blow off your writing classes, because you are going to need to express yourself. You can't say that the work is personal and that nobody is going to understand it. You have to be able to talk about your work and really be able to answer questions about it too, and be prepared to do that and take responsibility for some of the images that you make or the choices that you make. So writing and talking are huge, very important. I would say, I was just recently working with an artist who is a really accomplished artist, but she needed help with the text that talked about her work, partially because she felt like the gallery that she was working with never really represented her in the way that she wanted to be represented in terms of describing her work. And so that's really important. You know, it's really important, especially as you develop your career and other people are talking about your artwork. You want to make sure that they get the right idea about what it's about. So that is very important. Being able to write about your work, being able to talk about your work, being able to answer questions. The other thing is, and this was what I just said before too, is that art is a job. So in this country, we don't have, they don't really do things like national treasures or that kind of thing. And so we don't really have a situation where artists are able to be supported by the government. They're just, generally speaking, they're not. And so we all have to work. We all have to have other jobs. And so if you can find a job in the arts, that is really wonderful, because it supports your vision and what you're trying to do. And if you don't have a job in the arts, then you have to figure out how to make time in your brain to make the art. So that is a very big challenge. But that being said, you know, it is something that if you love it and you're compelled to do it, you'll figure it out and you'll find the time and the space. But you know, the other thing about being a job is also to remember that, you know, just because places like New York and LA are, you know, bastions of contemporary art, they're also incredibly expensive. And so thinking about living in a place like Cleveland or Pittsburgh or many different places where you can actually afford to live as an artist, or have a job and afford and also make your work, or want to have a studio or something like that. All of that is really important. And so most of the people that I know who are artists who live in New York City have a really hard time making their art. And so being an artist is hard work. And it is something where, we ask for support, you apply for grants, you try to get into shows, you go out there and you share your work, but it's, it doesn't come to you necessarily unless you're really, really lucky. So that is a very important thing. And like I said before, making art is a gift, and it's something that you can share with people. You can touch people, you can include people, you can teach people. There are lots of different ways in which you can bring your vision of the world and your vision of art making and the things that you learn to others, and to help them improve their lives and their way of seeing the world. And then the last thing that I was just going to say is that really the best thing that you can do is just think of yourself as a sponge. And this is true in all professions, but as an artist, you're listening, you're looking, you're hearing, you're reading, and you are experiencing what happens around you, and those things are all potentially fodder for your work. So be a sponge. If you get to travel someplace, even if it's to the next town, really look. Even if it's in your own town and you do a staycation, you'll see things and you'll find things that that surprise you, and they may stay with you in your sketchbook or on your phone. You take a picture of them, or you just remember them. But all of that, everything that we experience can be turned into, translated into an object or music or something written, or any number of things. And so that joy and that amazing opportunity that we have just to experience the world around us by being alive can help make you a really good artist. So I think that is probably good. I've talked enough. And congratulations to everybody for the exhibition, and best of luck. And thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you today. All right. Thank you very much. Bye.